my name's Matt Widgery from FramedPlanet.com, and in today's episode we're going to be having a look at a proper classic camera. This is the FE2, dating all the way back to 1982. I was 3 when this camera came out, and to be honest, I think it's aged better than I have. It's certainly got a few less grey hairs. But it's a cult status camera, and for very good reason. This is basically, as far as I can tell, it's the camera that has everything in it that you would ever possibly need. So you're looking at a very compact bodies. These little F-series cameras were very compact, and they followed in the mold of the Olympus OM1 that came out just a couple of years before it, and it heralded in a brave new era of smaller, lighter, more manageable SLR cameras. And all the big manufacturers of the day were getting involved. So Olympus had the OM1, there were some little compact ones from Minolta and Pentax as well. And the Nikon, although not quite as small as the smallest of the small, which was the Olympus, is certainly a very nice handheld sort of a size. But that's not where it ends. This is actually one of the most advanced manual focus cameras that was ever produced. You have on here a shutter speed that goes all the way up to 0.004 of a second. That was incredibly advanced in 1982. This was right at the bleeding edge of technology, and it was only possible because of a very advanced, very sophisticated titanium vertical shutter plane that was in there, that was incredibly thin and could move from one end to the other of its travel in 3.3 milliseconds. It was biblically quick and really unrivaled at the time. That also allowed it to have a flash sync speed of 250th of a second. Now, bear in mind that when my Fuji X-T1 came out in 2014, that had a flash sync speed of 180th. And when I upgraded it to the X-T2, which came out I think in 2016, that only has a flash sync speed of 200th of a second. So this has got a better flash sync speed than my 2016 flagship camera from Fuji. So it's a really impressive design, really impressive bit of kit. The other nice thing about it, and the reason that I particularly like cameras of this era from Nikon, is that you get with the system, the concurrent lenses with these little AI and AIS lenses, and they are so well made and so compact and so nice to use. So these tiny little things, this here, by the way, this one, which looks dinky and tiny, and it's about the same size as with a modern camera, maybe I don't know, a 24mm or a 50mm or something. This one is actually a 135mm f3.5 lens. It's so compact because the lens hood is a little retractable thing. It's all metal, it folds straight in there, and it's absolutely delightful. I do need to get a lens cap for the back of there. That is on order from Amazon. I don't know where it went, but when I dug them out of storage, that was sitting in there gathering dust. So that will need cleaning and sorting out. This one on this side is the wide angle. So this is a 24mm 2.8 and is just brilliant for doing interior architectural stuff, anything where you want a wide angle. It's a rectilinear lens, it's tiny, and again, all metal body construction. And I particularly like on all these series of lenses, you get these sort of colour, these multicolored sort of little stripes on them. It's kind of like Technicolor and cool to tell you what the sort of hyperfocal lengths are. All of the different f-stops are in different colours, as pink and green and yellow and blue and orange. It's all amazing. It's really kind of funky and up to date. And then this one on the front of the lens here is the 50mm 1.8. It's tiny, it's well made, everything feels absolutely dead on. The only thing I've never really been able to work out on these is what these funny little pokey metal things are that stick out. I don't know what they are. If anybody does, let me know. I mean, I guess you can use them to sort of, I don't know, to sort of cut cheese with, maybe, I don't know, or, you know, I'm not entirely sure, but they're kind of silly because what they do is chew holes out of your camera bag when you pull them in and out. I'm quite tempted to file them off. I've never seen any reason for using them, but if anybody does know what they're for, please drop me a comment in the comment section below this and let me know. So other features about this camera are that it includes a plus and minus 2-stop of exposure compensation on there. You've got a little screw hole in there so that you can put a shutter release on there. Another really nice feature about this camera is that the film advance lever here, when you have the lever in the completely recessed position like that, it actually locks out the shutter so that when it's in the camera bag or you're just moving it around, you can't accidentally push it and waste a shot. Of course, in the days of film, that's important. These days with digital, who cares if you lost one of your 600 billion shots that's on your 256 gig SD card. In these days, you had 24 or 36 pictures, and it was a bummer if you lost one of them taking a photo of your foot getting out of the bag. So if you want to take a photo, you lift it out to this first position, and then you can fire the shutter, and then you advance the film on with the lever in the standard way. The mechanical shutter in here is also extremely advanced, not just because it uses these titanium blades and has this incredibly fast movement, but it uses a very sophisticated dampening system which eliminates the need for mirror lockup. This again at the time was revolutionary and meant that you could shoot handheld at very, very low speeds. It was a very, very nice design at the time and was really over-engineered in many respects, this camera. It lost out in market sales to the rivals from Canon and Minolta at the time simply because it was over-engineered and a little bit on the pricey side. And even with Nikon's notorious habit of putting out high prices and then discounting them by 30% almost immediately, it still was more expensive than things like the A1 and the OM1. So that was a problem for people back in the day. For people picking them up now, not so much of an issue, because even though you will pay for a good example like this between £200 and £400, you can pick them up on eBay for a little bit less than that, and compared to a modern camera, it means that they're certainly a lot cheaper than the equivalent digital. The lenses themselves are also very good value. Each of these here, the 135mm portrait lens, the 24mm wide-angle lens, and the 50mm 1.8 can all be had for between £100 and £300 in perfect condition, and you can often find bargains. I picked up all three of these lenses from a local seller who was advertising them on a local, I think it was Craigslist or Gumtree or one of those. I picked up the whole lot, and I think I paid about £100 or maybe £150 for all three. An absolute steal, and these bargains are all out there if you know where to look for them. So back to the little camera then. The other feature I really like about this, for those that are sort of a bit on the artier and fartier side of the photography spectrum, is that there's a little lever here which allows you to do double exposures right within the camera. So what you do is you take your first picture and then you pull this little lever towards you, and then as you wind the lever on, it's not advancing the film, it's only resetting the shutter, so that when you press it again, you've got to remember to pull it out in the first position. When you press it again, then it will put the double exposure over the first, so you can get some really interesting effects from that. There are different focusing screens available in this. This is the standard one, which has one of the little things that kind of slide into position to help you find focus. There's one in there with a grid if you've got one leg longer than the other and have trouble finding your verticals. And then there's a basic sort of, matte screen that you can swap out there as well. Unlike the fully professional bodies, these ones did not have the removable pentaprism, so this is the one that you get, but it is one of the biggest and brightest viewfinders that I've ever used. It's like looking through a panoramic window. You really do kind of lose yourself in the scene. The only issue with that is that although the viewfinder itself is actually very big, the portal that you look through at the back is very small. That's only 14mm across there, and if you wear glasses like I do when I haven't got the contact lenses in, you will struggle to, you have to sort of move around quite a lot, and you do have that thing then of the glasses mashing up against your face. It's a big and highly magnified viewfinder with 0.86 times magnification, but it's only a 93% field of view coverage, and that shrinks to about 90 if you're wearing glasses and you're trying to sort of duck around the scene. So remember to leave plenty of room for error around the outside of your picture. On the back of it, you do have the connectors in there to put a motor drive on there, and if you do that, you're going to get a blistering 3.6 frames per second. Now, that might not seem like much, but bear in mind this thing is manual focus, and also with film, that means that you'll very quickly burn through a roll of 36 films. For 36 pictures. I wouldn't recommend shooting any of these days in burst mode. Why would you, when modern digital cameras will do a lot better? This for me is about slowing the process down. It's about enjoying photography, savouring all of the really beautiful mechanical features of these older cameras, but with some more sophisticated and user-friendly features. One of the things I particularly like about this, and it's possibly my favourite thing, is the light meter inside. On the left-hand side of the screen, it has two needles that go up and down, and they float up and down to tell you whether or not you are correctly exposed. But it does two things. Instead of just saying go up or go down a little bit, what it does is it actually gives you an indicator of what it thinks that the shutter speed should be set to in order to get that exposure correct. So it not only just tells you if you're under or over, but it suggests that you should put it to a 60th of a second or a 500th of a second in order to make that exposure correct. It also, on the right-hand side of the screen, has a nice little warning, which tells you if you've got the exposure compensation flicked onto something. It doesn't tell you what the exposure compensation is set to, but it does at least warn you to pay attention and look, just in case you've knocked it accidentally. The exposure compensation dial itself is pretty hard to use. It's finicky. There's a little button on the top which is kind of hard to press, and then you have to scroll the wheel round a little bit. It does work. It's not something you could do in the field in a hurry unless you've maybe had some more practice with it or are a heart surgeon with really nimble fingers. That being said, the fact that it's on there at all is great, and because you can't easily knock it, unlike I'm looking at you, Fuji, your XT1s, and to a lesser extent, but I've still had it happen on the XT2s, where the dial is kind of exposed and it does get knocked accidentally. So I like the fact that it's there. But the other thing which I really like about the display in here is the lovely analog little portal, which looks down from a little window at the bottom of the pentaprism down onto the front of the lens itself, and gives you a tiny little window which tells you what the f-stop of the lens is set to. It's gorgeous. It's such a funky thing. I wish there was a way of doing that on modern cameras. Most of them, of course, don't even have these markings on the outside of them. But, you know, occasionally some manufacturers do, like Fuji, for example. And wouldn't it be cool, instead of having an LCD screen, if you could have a little tiny window that you could look through? It's just delightful. There is, as well as a hot shoe on there, there's a little sync connector there for plugging in studio lights and things. This hot shoe is pretty sophisticated. At the time, this was you know, really quite remarkable that it not only had the hot shoe on there, but it could do TTL metering as well. Pretty fantastic. That really does make it a very practical device for using in the studio as well as outdoors. And it means that, you know, using all sorts of different flashes there in all sorts of different shooting conditions is very useful. Another nice feature, you've got a standard sort of self-timer button on here, but what it does when you cock that is that it automatically gives you mirror lockup as well, which is pretty funky and pretty cool overall. So that was the little overview of the Nikon FE2. If you want to go and buy one, there's plenty available. They made like 1.8 billion of them over the years. Some people actually prefer the original FE, so that's another option on there. For that, you don't get the 4,000th of a second, you only get 1,000th of a second, but okay. But it means that you get a couple more shots when you're shooting with film, because you can shoot the first two in any shutter speed before you wind it onto 0. So with a 36 exposure film, you can sometimes get maybe 38 or 39 shots. So if that's important to you, you can do that. And the mechanical only setting, because this one does require a battery in order to make the shutter speeds work, but in this mode, M250 on this one, if you turn that around, that will allow you to shoot mechanically with no battery at 250th of a second, which is a little on the high side for everyday use, especially if the lighting isn't good. On the FE, you get a 90th of a second, which maybe is slightly more useful, although not so good if people are moving around. Still, it gets you out of a bind. So the batteries in here, they are the little sort of watch type batteries. I think they're called LR4s, something like that. I'll put a link in the description. Takes a couple of those. They last about a year with average usage, certainly a lot better than the 9 seconds that you get with modern batteries. And overall, that is just a terrific bit of kit. It means you can throw it in the bag and take it with you. And look how small that is to have an entire, basically semi-professional outfit, full frame, and the whole thing is like yay big. What can you get in anything that has that set of features on it? I think it's terrific. I'm going to look forward to coming out and doing some shooting with it, and I will share the results with you. So, as always, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all again soon. Cheers.